Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Crip Tips TV Episode 3 featuring Drew Gurza. My name is Jack Meyer, and I'll be your audio describer today. Before the show begins, I'm going to briefly describe the people and locations that are featured in this episode. The two people featured in today's episode are host Debbie Patterson, or Deb, and her guest, Drew Gurza. Deb Patterson is a middle-aged white woman with twinkling, expressive eyes. She wears a dark olive-colored V-neck shirt covered in tangled pale stripes like wild grass, and a silver necklace with a round pendant partially obscured by her shirt. She has long, chestnut brown hair with bangs and uses a manual wheelchair. Deb is a playwright, director, and actor from Winnipeg. She's also the artistic director of Sick and Twisted Theatre. Drew Gurza is a white man with wide, smiling eyes and a big grin usually painted on his face. He has very short dark brown hair with sideburns and thin stubble. He wears a blue t-shirt with white text on it that reads, "Touch my joystick." He wears earbuds with a tangled black cord that falls down across his torso. He uses a motorized wheelchair with a bright orange headrest. Drew is an award-winning disability awareness consultant and the chief disability officer and co-founder of Handi, a sextech company for and by disabled people. The episode is comprised of two segments, Deb's interview with Drew Gurza, and a short epilogue called the Crip Postscript, in which Deb responds to a message sent in by a viewer and previews what's coming next for Crip Tips TV. For the interview, Deb sits in a bright, clean room full of lamps of various shapes and sizes and houseplants. The wall behind her is painted dark blue, and most of it is taken up by a huge window. The window shade is pulled down, but it's translucent, and sunlight floods through it, making the room bright. Before and after the interview, when she addresses us, Deb is in the same room from the last episode. If you weren't with us, it's a dimmer, warmly lit room, and she's again in front of a large window with sunlight coming in through the window shade. During the interview, Drew is in his apartment, where the walls and ceiling are all white. He's in front of a partially open door that leads into a room we cannot see. Both Deb and Drew are shown through direct feeds of their webcams, taken directly from a computer recording of their video call. That's it for the pre-show description. I hope you enjoy this episode of Crip Tips TV. A pink cartoon house sits in a green field under a cloudy blue sky. White text appears on the house, reading Crip Tips TV. Debbie waves her arms and shimmies from side to side, dancing in her wheelchair. She leans forward and beams.
Hi, welcome to Crip Tips TV. I'm your host, Debbie Patterson. Here in Winnipeg, we've finally broken the back of winter. It's still cold, but it's not face-hurting cold anymore, so I think it's safe to say we're through the worst of it. And as the prospect of winter's end gives way to the promise of spring, a young Crip's fancy turns to love. Our guest this week is an expert in this field. Drew Gurza is your #1 queer cripple. He's also a sought-after speaker on the topic of sex and disability, and he produces an award-winning podcast called Disability After Dark. He's also a dear friend and collaborator, and I'm so excited for you to meet him. Here's our conversation. Hi, Drew.
Hi.
Welcome to Crip Tips TV.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I'm Deb. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. Okay, and first of all, let's have a moment of admiration for your beautiful Touch My Joystick t-shirt. That is fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my own creation. I was bored and I was like, you know what? I want a shirt that says this.
It's a great shirt. So Drew, I want you to talk a bit about how your life has changed during the pandemic. What things have changed for you?
A year ago, I was planning to go to Los Angeles for a bunch of stuff. And I went to Los Angeles for a big award show, and I was doing all this cool stuff with my podcast. And this year I've barely left the house. I mean, so things have really, really changed. And for me, as a disabled person, things have changed really drastically in the last, I want to say, month, 2 months, because we've had an outbreak with the staff where I live. So people have contracted the virus, which means less staff means changes in care plans, changes in how people get up in their day. And so for most of the last year, we were able to have most of the staff be okay. But in the last, I would say, month, things have really changed, shifted, and so that's been really, really hard.
And now just so our viewers understand, you're not living in a long-term care facility. You're in an apartment and there are a number of people who require attendant care in your building,
Yes,
and you all share the
the
same
people.
support workers. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's under the long-term care model, but it's called um, supportive housing. So it's
Oh,
not given the same priority when it comes to vaccinations and all that kind of stuff. It could be tomorrow or it could be in 5 months, and it's just,
right.
no one's really sure. But in
So
the
you've got all the risks, but none of the uh,
reward,
benefits. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Have you found anything positive out of this pandemic? Has anything gotten better in your life?
I've been able to be more creative, I guess. I've been able to work on other projects and do kind of things that I wouldn't normally do and put out more like digital content around what I do. And I run a podcast called Disability After Dark, and I decided to start a podcast network. And so I've been able to connect with other disabled people and be like, hey, do you want to start a show? I can help you do that. So it's allowed me to really flex my creative muscle a little bit.
Okay, because your focus is all sex and disability, I want to talk about sex.
Awesome.
So I'm assuming that during this time, it's harder for you to have your needs met.
Yes.
Yeah,
1,000,000% yes.
yeah. So how do you usually go about it?
Well, normally I would work with a sex worker, and I would work with someone that I've known now for 4+ years. And
Mhm.
pre-pandemic, I would say every 2 to 3 weeks, I would send him a text and be like, "Hey, do you want to have a session, or can we book a session?" And we would do the things, and I would
Right.
have my needs met. We'd have a good time. And since the pandemic hit, all of that stopped because
Right.
we want we wanted me to be safe and for him to be safe, and it's so physically it stopped. I mean, we've done some digital things, like he's made videos for me and I made videos for him saying like, hey, you're awesome, like let's here's me, being naughty. But it's changed the way I feel about my body because I haven't been touched intimately in over a year, which
Oh,
is something pre-pandemic I'm sort of used to. That's happened to me in previous parts of my life. But the last 4 years, the whole point of me deciding to work with a sex worker was so that I'd never have to experience that again. And so when this kind of hit, it was like, oh, okay, I have to put this away now. And so I really miss being touched. I miss intimacy. I miss all that, and it's angering because I carved out I created that for myself with
right.
hiring a sex worker, and so to have that taken away has been really hard.
But you've dealt with this before, right? You've dealt with this in the past?
Yeah, I've had bouts where I didn't have sex for like 10, 12 months just
Yeah.
because of ableism and because people are silly. So I'm used to it. I'm used to this, but I forgot how hard it was, and I
Yeah.
forgot how difficult it would be to not have access, because even though me being able to hire a sex worker is a privilege and a lot of people with disabilities can't, I took it very seriously and I saved up money where I could, and I worked really hard to get money to do that because I felt it was a need. And so when it was taken away, not by anyone's fault but the world, it was like, oh, like what do I
Yeah.
do?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're not the only person dealing with this,
Yeah.
and you've dealt with it before. So I'm wondering if you have any advice, like how do you deal with that frustration? And how do you deal with that need to be touched?
I think you should get angry. You should put that anger somewhere. You should write about it. Like for me, Twitter and Instagram are the places where I can say, you know what? Haven't been touched in over a year. That kind of fucking sucks. And here's what I wanted to say about that. And it's a place where I can put that down and share that with my community and the disability community and say what that feels like, and say, you know what? Like sometimes I'll make a joke. So I'm like, I really wish I could touch a dude right now. But like, and even the shirt I'm wearing was partially kind of a joke on how no one's touched me in over a year. So I use humor to get through it for myself, but I also allow myself to feel angry about it and to talk about that anger.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about how a lack of intimate touch has changed the way you think about your own body.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm touched primarily every day by care workers. And because it's COVID right now, they come in your house wearing a full hazmat suit with like masks and a thing and a face shield and a gown, which is totally fine. And of course, I want everybody taking care of me to feel comfortable and safe. So I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying it really is jarring to know that the only way that I've been touched in a year has been for medical reasons or for personal care reasons, and that feels it's really hard. Like, I don't know what's going to happen when I'm actually allowed to have sex again. I don't know how I'm going to react because i I genuinely was thinking about it this morning. I don't remember what that's, I mean, I can like think back to moments, but I don't remember what that actually feels like. And that's hard to reconcile with, because literally the last time I had sex was a year and a week ago, like, so over a year ago now. And genuinely don't remember, because when he left that time, we said, okay, I'll see you in 3 weeks. And like, this was just before the pandemic, and we all thought, oh yeah, it'll just be fine. And
Yeah.
then when it ramped up, we were all like, oh, fuck, this is really what's happening. What do we do? And so, being only touched by caregivers, you feel like your body is not meant to be sexual, because the way they touch you is very clinical, as they should, because there needs to be a
Right.
boundary and it's safe. And I understand all that, but it's like, you can't. You then realize that your body is an instrument for their care. It's them helping you. You need the care, so the touch is very terse, very quick, very like boom boom. We're gonna do this. Like, I can't, and I would never say to one of my caregivers like, "Hey, just keep doing that." Like, of course not. But you know, it would be nice to have some touch that is non-transactional and non-medicalized.
Do you have to kind of leave your body a bit
Yeah,
during that time? Like just leave, dissociate a bit so that you're not um,
yeah.
crossing that boundary when you're being
Well,
touched
I,
by a care worker?
I think that because I've had care my whole life since I was young, I've learned very quickly to just you just compartmentalize that, because you're like, this is care, like, this is care, and you just tell yourself this is care. So I remember the first time that a person touched me sexually, I was like, I don't know what this is so different for me. And so when I get to have that again, like, I think, and I've told my sex worker, like, I think I'll be shy and nervous, because I haven't had that kind of touch in a year. Over the last 2 weeks here, because we've had the outbreak, they've had to give us bed baths, which means I can't even shower, which feels very weird, because I really, as anybody does, I love my shower, but me especially, because I'm so disabled, I really, really like a shower. So not being able to do that, they have to bed bath you, which means they have to get a really rough cloth and put it, do all the things they got to do to clean you. And so in those moments, when you're lying naked, spread eagle on a bed to be washed, you do have to dissociate. So it's just been hard, because I can't, I don't want to cross that boundary with the staff, because I respect them, and uh, you shouldn't, because it's care. And B, I don't want to say to my sex worker, come in when it doesn't feel safe, because that's not safe for either of us. So
Right.
we're all in a really hard waiting pattern, and it's harder than I expected it to be.
Wow. Okay. So could you tell us a little bit about That's Handy?
Yeah, Handi actually is the name of our company. And it's a company that my sister and I created together back in 2018. We created the company. Well, we started talking about the idea, and I was on the beach in Australia. And my sister said to me, "Well, hey, don't you work in sex and disability?" And I said, "Yeah." And so we started. She goes, "Well, why don't you just get regular sex toys?" And I showed her my hands,
Shows
and I showed
us.
her how
His fingers are
disabled
rigid.
my hands were. And I said, like, there's no way that I could grab a regular sex toy. I don't have the dexterity to grab a regular toy. And she said, "Oh, I never realized that." And so we started talking some more. And she goes, "Well, why don't you and I make one?" And I remember kind of just looking at her like, do I want to make a sex toy with my sister? That feels weird. But the more and more we started talking about it, we did a survey that we put out just to gauge interest. We did a survey. 63% of people said they had hand limitations and they had trouble self-pleasuring. And 92% of the people we talked to on our initial interview said, I want a toy like this. It's about time. So
Oh,
we knew we had something really important to share. And now we're at a place where we're about to go into prototyping. So if I were to give you a description of it visually, it looks like if a pool noodle and a body pillow had a baby, and this is what they came up with. So it's designed so that you can it's accessible from start to finish. You don't have to use your hands. You can hog onto it like you would a body pillow. So for anybody with limited dexterity, because a lot of sex toys have really tiny buttons and they're really hard to hold and they're really if you have problems with grip or any hand limitations, it doesn't work for you. So that means that hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, millions even, can't access these kind of toys. So we thought, let's just try. And I mean, alongside the toy, we have a book
He reaches off
that we
screen.
created. We talked to 50 people from all over the world, and we created
He holds up a copy.
The Handi Book of Love, Loss, and Disability, which is a book all about stories from people. We asked them 14 key questions about sex and disability. So, what is the best thing about your disabled sex? What is the worst thing about your disabled sex? What is it like to have sex with chronic pain? A bunch of questions that most people had never been asked before. And they wrote us prose, they wrote us stories, they contributed artwork, and so we got all these stories and we thought this could be a book. This needs to be out there because as I'm sure you know, and all the people watching know, there are not enough resources and just things. People can go to the store and say, I want a book on sex and disability. And what do? They'll give them that one book that was published in 2003, which is great. But there's more than that. There's so much more than that. So we thought, let's see if it's a book.
and the profits go towards developing this sex toy, yes?
Yeah, the sex toy, which we have dubbed the joystick.
It's the t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, all the profits go into the toy and go back into the company. So it's not like we're selling this book just for profit. It's when you buy a book, you're not only funding sex education around disability, you're also funding someone's orgasm, and that's really cool.
That's great. You're giving pleasure.
Yeah, we are, and as we say at the company, we are putting pleasure within reach for everyone.
Oh, that's great. We've been talking on this show about how part of how there's a sort of a basic human need to be of service to others, right?
Yeah.
And so this is an excellent opportunity to be of service to others by spreading that pleasure around.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, people always say they want to do good things for disabled people, especially right now. Well, this and staying home are two of the things you can do to protect disabled people right now.
Drew, do you have any advice for the bipeds about how to deal with the lockdown, how to deal with the pandemic? Is there anything that you've learned, like through your lived experience of disability? Do you think you've developed any transferable skills that people might use?
The advice for the walkies from the wheelchair user. I guess I would say keep going. Just know that it will get better. It's gonna change. You will be okay. This has happened before and will happen again, and it's all right. Like, but also I would say be upset. Show that emotion. Be angry. Don't sugarcoat over what you're feeling. Get it out somewhere and talk about it. And like, if you have to start an Instagram or a blog or a vlog or whatever it is you got to do to get the feeling out, as long as you're not hurting someone else, the feelings are valid.
Right on. That's great. Thanks so much, Drew.
No problem. Thank you so much too, Deb.
It has been such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Always. It's you know how much I adore you, and it's such a pleasure to talk to you as well.
I adore you too. You're a good friend.
I know. So are you. So are you.
Thanks, Drew. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Now that you've met Drew, I encourage you to check out his junk online. Disability After Dark, the podcast, can be found wherever you get your podcasts. There are literally hundreds of episodes and it is excellent. It consistently ranks on iTunes' top 10 sexuality-themed podcasts. You should also check out that'shandi.co. It's a great place to go. There's also a spot where you can donate to support Disability After Dark.
Text reads, Crip Postscript.
One of our viewers has written into us with a little bit of advice. She wrote, I've been staying positive and trying to keep busy to avoid dwelling on the things I can't do, but it's just been going on too long. And you know, I was talking to some of my girlfriends yesterday and we just let rip. It was just what my soul needed to say, F this. Oh my God, we laughed. I mean, come on, enough already.
She grins at us and nods.
She makes a good point. It's important to stay positive and to avoid dwelling on the negatives, but it's equally important to be authentic and to honor what we're actually feeling. And our viewer has found a super healthy way of doing this. She's using humor, she's relying on the support network of her friends, and she's not taking herself too seriously. We all hide aspects of our authentic selves in order to be sociable. But through this pandemic, as we've had less opportunities to be sociable, hopefully we've had more time to get in touch with our inner authentic weirdos. And I really hope going forward, as we become more sociable, that we can make more room in our relationships for our own and each other's inner authentic weirdos. So here's to more outrageousness, to more truth-telling, and to more laughter. That's our episode for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we won't be putting out a new episode because we want to use that time to highlight some of our favorite Crip content creators, everything from circus acts to cooking shows. But we still want to hear from you. Write to us at criptipstv@gmail.com if you have any questions or if you have advice on how to get through this pandemic. We're all in this together. Thanks so much for watching.
For Crip Tips TV, creator and host, Debbie Patterson. Guest, Drew Gurza. Writer, Debbie Patterson. Publicist and marketing manager, Greg Clausen. Video editor and camera operator, Arn McPherson. Project coordinator, Paige Lewis. Zoom technical consultant, Angela Chalmers. Graphic designer, Melanie Sarazin. Social media graphic designer, Jaden Clausen. Audio description, Jack Meyer. ASL signer, Jordan Sangalang. Special thanks to Sydney Bosco and Gislina Patterson. For Sick and Twisted Theatre, Board of Directors, Kevin Augusta, Chair. Katie German, Vice Chair. Patrick Falconer, Treasurer. Dan Augusta, Secretary. Artistic Associates, Dan Augusta, Angela Chalmers, Trish Cooper, Arn McPherson. Land Acknowledgement. Sick and Twisted Theatre creates work in Treaty 1 territory, located on the ancestral and traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We acknowledge the harms and injustices of the past, and dedicate ourselves to bringing a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration to all our work. We offer this acknowledgement in the belief that doing so will help us to be mindful artists, performers, and storytellers. Sick and Twisted Theatre. Safe at Home MB. ACTRA MB. That's it for this episode of Crip Tips TV. My name is Jack Meyer. I've been your audio describer for this episode. I work as a describer with VIEW, which stands for Vocal Image Ensemble Winnipeg. We're a branch of Sick and Twisted Theatre trying to make theatre, dance, and other media in Winnipeg more accessible to the blind and vision loss community. For now, we're mostly working on recorded media, but once live theatre returns, we have big plans for making live performance in our city more accessible as well. We'd love to hear what you thought of the description today. Your feedback, whether it's positive or negative, really helps us develop our practice and serve you as best as we can. So if you have feedback or questions about what we do, you can email us at viewwinnipeg@gmail.com. That's with only one W, so VIEWINNIPEG @gmail.com. Until next time, take care.